Hey, what's up guys? Chris here, and in this video, we're going to be talking about raids, and this is not going to be one of those videos where I just show you, hey, this is how I soloed the raid on level 100. There's a lot of videos out there where you can find teams where people are soloing the raid with different elements or different attack types. And that's great, except one of the problems is that most of the time we may not be able to assemble the team. You may not have the units and vision cards and gear and these combinations in order to put together the same teams. So in this video, I kind of wanted to focus more on how you approach optimizing your team in order to find a combination or put together that puzzle that can solo level 100 raids. For this Kraken raid, which is by far the most annoying raid that War of the Visions has thrown at us, it took me personally about maybe about 2.5 hours, somewhere between 20-25 different combinations on level 100 in order to find one that consistently beat it at level 100. So we're going to go through how that process went for me, so hopefully that this process can help you kind of determine how to form your account around beating a level 100 raid, and some of the things that you can look to change or improve upon your runs in order to make it more consistent. Let's jump right into this. All right, guys, so we're going to start off by looking at the team that I used to beat the raid, and this is very similar to the wind team that I believe Dr. Diggs used to beat the raid as well, just using different wind magic units. And you can see my Howlet is not level 120. These vision cards are not maxed out. This Rama could be maxed out, but I'm short on vision orbs, so we're still getting there. So we're missing about 12% magic on that, and then this one is only 40 out of 70, but this aquatic killer up 17. Theoretically, I could get more magic attack as well, but my trousseau is also not maxed out. If I go down here, it's level 85. It's waiting on vision orbs as well. So it's not an optimal team. So there are definitely ways in which I can improve this just by leveling stuff up. But that's the point of this video, is kind of to show you, you don't always have to have an optimal team. There's usually ways around developing this. The place we'll start with this though is that where you have your raid team, usually you're going to have a team that's going to be pretty good against most raids. This was the team I was running. It was wind slash. You have a lot of different things going on here, like wind attack, extra attack, slash resistance, penetration, just a bunch of imperils, defense down, agility down. You have unit attack resistance down on Yerma. This team worked great. It was fine. I was running on auto right up until like mid 70s, I think, somewhere is where it started to fall apart pretty quickly on this Kraken raid. So knowing that it's weak to magic, I had to pivot over to magic. And there's a couple of nuances with this team, which we're going to talk about when we actually get into the run itself. But one of the things that you do when you're manipulating this team in order to get the best results for your raids is going to be manipulating agility. And I know a lot of people have talked about this when they do their raid guides, but having a piece of agility gear on all of your units is a really big piece in order to get your turns to line up correctly. So you can see I have agility 5 here on More the Merrier. We have 7 agility from Lucia's TMR. We have 5 agility from Gargus. And we have some extra agility 6 here on Howlet. And I had to manipulate whether it was 5, 6, or 7. It was really that razor thin for this raid. So that's one of the things that you can do, is use the different values. Even if it's 5, 6, or 7 on these gear, even one agility can make the difference between when a unit goes or doesn't go before the next unit, setting up chains, doing a ton of extra damage. So that's one way to manipulate agility. The other one is through your Espers. So you see on Little Leela, I'm not using the Typhoon or Bahamut. I basically swapped around these Espers so that their turns lined up correctly, because you want your turns to line up correctly so you can get the maximum chain in order to do the most amount of damage. All right, let's go into the actual run. I'm actually recorded it on the side, and we're going to kind of play and pause and talk through all the pitfalls that I had to go through 2.5 hours and how I resolved those situations. All right, guys, let's go through the actual run here. And the idea behind this being, we're going to kind of talk through some of the different pitfalls and some of the different ways in which my composition was failing here and how I fixed those problems. So that way, if you guys are running into some of these same problems, you might have an idea of how to fix them. The first thing I want to talk about here is the initial positioning of your units. This is absolutely paramount in raids. Sometimes you might be using the same exact combination of units, vision cards, and gear, and your units might just be in the wrong spot. So if you're on like the razor's edge of being able to solo a level 100 raid, try just switching the positioning of your units and you might get a completely different result. So we're going to see how important that is for a couple of my units right here at the beginning. So we'll go ahead and let this play. So one of the first things you want to do is take out the ads. So you see Halloween Leela doing that right away. A lot of times if you don't have like Halloween Leela or Ildira or some kind of unit that can throw out a giant AoE right away, you won't be able to take out the ads. This is super important to kill the ads with an AoE so you aren't wasting additional actions on the ads. If you can't kill them right away, like I did here with Halloween Leela, what you want to do is after all your units take your first turn and those ads take their first turn, try and find a way in which they move into a way or a formation that you can AoE them and kill them in one action. You do not want to waste ideally more than one action killing the ads. You need all of those actions for doing damage to the boss. On that initial positioning, this is not the only place that Halloween Leela could kill those ads at. She could kill them from More the Merrier's spot, but we're going to talk about that for More the Merrier's turn here in a second. So you see that buff that More the Merrier's throwing out on your unit's first turn when they're not within range of the boss. Make sure they're doing one of two things with their buffs. They're either increasing damage or increasing speed, which thereby will increase damage because you can build longer chains. So More the Merrier increasing her magic there. Now this is just one of those finicky things, and I don't know if there's other units like this, but More the Merrier's AI is kind of weird. So there might be other units that you run into and you cannot figure out why they're not using certain abilities. More the Merrier will not use TMR abilities if she has her buffs turned off. She prioritizes her buffs first, and then she like uses TMR abilities are like way down her priority list. So some units, their AI, you just kind of have to work around it, turning abilities on and off. More the Merrier, I could not get her to use TMR buffs, so I just have to have her using a personal buff. So second thing on the positioning, Gargus's positioning here, super important. You have Howlet casting a buff, again, damage. You see the agility there, so damage and speed on both Gargus and Howlet. Again, Gargus's positioning, super important. This is the only spot where he could run up and hit the boss on the first turn. Again, not wasting actions. He's also got that area attack resistance down in peril, which is really good for raids. Okay, so Kraken moving up here. Vision cards. On my initial composition, I had Scion of House Beowulf in my composition, which increases agility by 15%. When I had that card in my comp, More the Merrier and both Halloween Leela had too much speed, so they were actually running up here into this area on their second turns. What that was causing the boss to do is actually stay right here and use water cannon on them. You want to make sure that the boss is moving, because if the boss uses an ability and doesn't move, they save CT, they get quicker turns, they break your chains a lot quicker, you do a whole lot less damage. So ideally find a combination where the boss moves and also uses an ability like we have here. The boss hitting Gargus, and now we go with our biggest chain here. So this is probably where you're going to build most of your damage, is on this first chain between a lot of your units right after the boss moves and uses an attack. So we see units just already near max damage with their magic attacks. So here's Howlet's limit break. I saw Diggs talking about, he's like, ideally if you can get Howlet to use his limit break, it's great because it has a wind imperil on it, which is true. Basically abilities on off, another one of those pitfalls that you might run into with units. You need to make sure that if you want an imperil ability to go off, that it does the most damage in that character's kit. So I had to turn off Hazard Slash in Howlet's kit, and I had to turn off a couple other abilities, but he needs something else to use, so I left Drain Evocation on. But any of his higher damage abilities I had to turn off. I also had to level up his limit break so that damage multiplier was high enough that he prioritized it in his first turn. So again, building that chain, we're at max damage already. Speaking of max damage, I'll pause this on Halloween Leela's action. But max damage, make sure you have a max damage card. Super important for PvE and raids. I mention this when I do my planning guides, but cards that have a max damage on them, especially the element ones, which have other things, so valuable for raids. So again, Kraken moving and using an ability saves us a ton of CT to build those chains on the second turn. I do want to mention something real quick right there, and you might be running into this when you run your raids. This may be a problem, especially if you run other units that are level 99, like my Howlet is here. The boss initially was staying up here even if I run the same exact composition with one thing differently, the boss was staying up here and actually hitting Howlet with this and dealing about, I don't know, 2/3 of his health bar, or about half of his health bar. I made one little change, which was to give him that unit bot, which gives him single target resistance. It means the boss no longer wanted to prioritize Howlet anymore, and the boss was prioritizing Gargus instead, because when the boss was prioritizing Howlet, Howlet was going down, the run was failing. So I said, hey, I wonder what happens if I increase Howlet's defense so he prioritizes somebody else. Completely changed the run. So again, we have More the Merrier doing damage. We have Gargus doing damage. So just building that second run of chains. So huge here that we allowed the boss to move in the second turn. Again, at max damage. At max damage. So Gargus using Typhon here. Actually, I will say one thing about this. I'll pause it here. This was kind of a happy circumstance. I did not set up him using Typhon. You can use Esper summons as a way to manipulate runs, and I've had to do that one time before on a different raid. But anytime that you have status effects, you can see that stun here, that aren't 100%, that the run succeeding or failing hinges on that status effect. That's not good. You do not want these status effects to be a reason that you can do the run on auto. Now, Typhon's stun, I believe, is 100%, so I wasn't worried about that in this run. I just wanted to mention that because some people might find a way to beat a raid with a status effect. So you see Howlet's at max damage, and then Howlin' Leela. Pretty much max damage. Pretty easy. So 4 actions left we had to beat this run. It's anywhere between 1 and 5 actions left that I can beat this raid. And there's a lot of different little things that I had to do to manipulate it to get it that way. So hopefully me talking through some of these different pitfalls that I had to go through, maybe you guys have found different creative solutions in order to beat raids. Let me know in the comments section below. I'm super excited to hear like some of those little tiny tweaks that you guys have had to do in order to find ways to beat raids, especially with this one. Like my margin of error was so razor thin because I don't have a level 120 Howlet, because I don't have some of those vision cards maxed out, because I don't have optimal gear for some of these things. So it was super fun to be able to figure out this raid, and now we just grind it all weekend because, you know, raids are awesome in War of the Visions. Thanks for watching, guys. Appreciate it. We'll catch you next time.